From the Gospel of St. John. When Jesus saw his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing beside her, he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then he said to the disciple, "Here is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his own home. How vast and deep is Jesus' love? He is suffering indescribable physical agony, and his heart has been broken by his people turning on him. No one would fault him for focusing on himself, for talking only to his Father in his last living moments. But he can't ignore the sight of his mother at the foot of the cross. His mother is sobbing and wretched with grief. His mother, the one who nursed him and swaddled him, the one who bandaged his skinned knees, the one who comforted him with hugs and kisses. Jesus is moved by her. He is disturbed at her distress more than his own. He is concerned deeply with her well-being, and he has a plan for her. I'd like to tell you a story about how God was moved by my own distress and how he brought me closer to the Blessed Mother. It starts with another Mary, my maternal grandmother. I was her first grandchild. My mother was the oldest of my grandparents' 8 children. I was extremely close to my grandmother until she passed away in 2013. Grandma was full of warmth and love, and she was a take-no-nonsense woman. She was also my best model for religious devotion and unshakable faith. Much of what I learned about how to put Sunday Mass into practice every day is due to her. She had a special affinity for the Blessed Mother, after whom she was named. She knew all the different ladies, Guadalupe, Fatima, Lourdes, and particularly because my grandmother loved Mary so much, she became very special to me too. Now, at the age of 34, my husband and I had been married for 11 years, a time that spanned graduate school and the start of our careers as a public school teacher and a professor. In 2012, Stephen finally achieved tenure, and that summer we moved from Boston, Mass., where my parents and grandparents lived, to Austin, Texas. We loved the landscape, the weather, the music, the food, and the people. We made friends easily, and Stephen found renewed professional exuberance after 7 years in a pressure cooker at MIT. Despite personal challenges I had with my career and my health that significantly influenced my transition, our overall outlook on life changed for the better. We felt content and settled for the first time, and we were excited and ready to make space in our heads and hearts to start a family. Like everything we had done in our professional and personal lives, we began working on this goal with seriousness. Shortly following our move to Texas, my grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 bile duct cancer. I was even more desperate to have a baby so she could meet her first great-grandchild. But it just wasn't happening for us. If you've never had trouble conceiving, it is hard to imagine how consumed with it a person can become in all domains of one's life. I took my temperature every day for years, put up with all manner of sometimes ridiculous, unsolicited advice, reflected on every choice my husband and I had made to lead us to our difficulties, and my self-esteem took a major hit because of my malfunctioning womanly mechanics. It was psychologically and physically draining, and I felt grief in all its stages: denial, anger, depression, and I was really good at the stage of bargaining. I'd think thoughts like, maybe I'll get pregnant and be due on Grandma's birthday. My grandmother's health deteriorated over 8 months. I thought, maybe I'll get pregnant in time to tell Grandma before she dies. I visited her for the last time in May of 2013 for my parting hugs and kisses and final words of wisdom. She said to me, Everything's a chance, Christina. Put it all in God's hands. And she slipped away at home, surrounded by family, on June 11th, 2013. I thought, maybe God is waiting until after she dies so that she can personally help him choose our baby. None of these maybes happened. It was during this very challenging time that I lost touch with Mary, the Blessed Mother. Now, it was never hard for me to be close to God during this time. I was baffled and bewildered and anguished because I had no idea what God's plan was for my would-be family. But I'd never lost my faith. However, I did lose touch with Mary. Mary never even tries to get pregnant. By the Holy Spirit, Jesus was incarnate of the Virgin Mary and became her baby. No baby would ever be incarnate of me. I wanted to stay close to Mary, but found it so hard to relate to her. The most vital thing I wanted to have in common in her, to be a mother, was out of reach. I believe God understands and has immense compassion for grief. How could he not when his own son died on the cross? Over time, Christ's healing love worked in the hearts of my husband and me. He led us toward the acceptance stage of grief and awoke in us the realization that we wanted children, period, more than biological children. That transformation allowed us to move forward with getting certified as foster parents. That transformation strengthened our resolve to stay committed to the process throughout the hundreds of pages of paperwork, home inspections, hours of training, lengthy home study interviews that pried into every nook and cranny of our personal lives, and lots of our own research about open adoption and transracial adoption. That transformation kept hope alive in us. How vast and deep is Jesus' love? He couldn't ignore the sight of me sobbing and wretched with grief, asking him over and over again, why, when, how will I become a mother? He was moved by me. He was disturbed at my distress. He was concerned deeply with my well-being. And he had a plan for me. He brought me back to my friend Mary, whom I have needed and admired, and to whom I have prayed innumerable times in the last few years. On July 31st, 2015, our Brendan was brought to our home and placed in our arms. 7 months later, we adopted him. And God said to me, "Woman, here is your son." And he said to my son, "Here is your mother."